for life.
Too sweet me for the love of God!
Hello, and welcome to this For Life production. I'm Frederick Calhoun, and today I am interviewing United States Coast Guard veteran and Bellingham police officer, Mark Auld. Hello, and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So I heard that you were in the Coast Guard for around 10 years. When did you actually join the Coast Guard?
I joined the Coast Guard on December 4th, 2004. I did 10 years active duty, and I did approximately 2 years in the reserves. Started with 8 weeks of basic training, and then my first duty station was on Staten Island in New York City.
Thank you for your service to this country. Could you tell me why you decided to join the Coast Guard?
I decided to join the Coast Guard. I knew I wanted to join the military, serve my country in some way, and I like being on the water, but I don't like being on the water enough to join the Navy.
So the Coast Guard was a nice, easy middle ground.
Exactly.
Not really easy, but a middle ground. Could you give me an overview of basic training?
So like I said, it was 8 weeks long. It was in Cape May, New Jersey. We started out, everybody from around the country, depending on where they lived at the time, they were flown into Philadelphia, where we all met on a Greyhound bus. They bussed us into the training center in Cape May. We got there at about 7 o'clock, and it was on from there. The drill instructors, or company commanders we call them, right on the bus started yelling, get off the bus, you get 30 seconds, you just use 20. Get off the bus, and went from there. We learned everything from how to shine your boots, how to make your uniform look nice, to discipline, military bearing, and also job-specific stuff like basic seamanship skills, swimming. We did a lot of swimming. It was actually surprising how many people showed up to Coast Guard basic training that didn't know how to swim, and they had to get up extra early in the morning to what was called remedial swimming. Basically, they had to take swimming lessons before the day even started. But they worked because everybody graduated.
Now, do you think that the Coast Guard is one of the least known branches of the military? Because when people think of the military, they usually think of Army, Navy, and then like the Air Force.
And the Marines.
And the Marines.
So the Coast Guard is one of the 5 branches of the military. We do not fall under the Department of Defense. We are in the Department of Homeland Security. But in time of war, if Congress ever actually officially declared war, we would fall under the Department of the Navy. So then, we join right in with the rest of them. But yes, it is definitely misconstrued as being the 5th branch of the military.
What was the hardest part of your time in the Coast Guard?
I'd say the hardest part about being in the Coast Guard was the last-minute training and deployments. I never went in. I never did any overseas deployments per se, but one of them, my last deployment, was the Deepwater Horizon oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico. We were there for 3 months, and we had 3 days' notice. Basically, you guys were picked to go down there, pack your bags, you leave in 3 days, and we were down there for 3 months.
How did the Coast Guard change you as a person?
The Coast Guard made me do a lot of growing up real fast, going right from high school to boot camp to being out on my own. It was the first time I was out on my own, out of my parents' house. After I got out of boot camp, got to my first duty station, I had to find my own apartment. I had to do all that on my own. All the little things that you don't think about, like, maintaining certain things in your apartment, or scheduling your own doctor's appointment, stuff like that. Stuff that as a kid, your parents did for you.
So the Coast Guard is one of the first times you were on your own and in
Exactly.
control of your life. What was the most daring and dangerous act while your time in the Coast Guard?
I'd say the most dangerous thing I've done would be operating one of our small boats in heavy weather. I was a small boat driver for a 47-foot motor lifeboat, and that vessel is capable not only of rewriting itself if it would roll over, but it operates in 30-foot seas or 20 feet of surf and 50 knots of wind. So even just the training on that is very dangerous, and we had to take it very seriously, and it was definitely an adrenaline rush, but it was a lot of fun.
Do you have any stories that you could tell us about in the Coast Guard?
One in particular, my most interesting rescue wasn't necessarily a standard Coast Guard water rescue. We got a call, I believe it was Christmas Eve back in 2009. We got a call that there was a couple of people that had snuck onto an abandoned island across from our station. It's actually the same island where the movie Shutter Island was shot. And somebody they climbed up an abandoned building and fell down an elevator shaft and couldn't get out. So the only way to get there obviously was by boat, because it was an island, and it was in the middle of the winter at night. There was nobody else besides us who could get out there, so we had to kind of think on the fly of how we were going to do this type of rescue. We'd never done it. No one at my station had ever done it before, so we brought the fire department along with us to kind of help out, and they had all the rigging and the harnesses to pull the guy out, and then we brought him back to the mainland where he was transported to the hospital and ultimately survived.
Well, we have to go to break right now, but when we come back, we'll be discussing his involvement in the Bellingham Police Force.
Bye, Janet. It's nice seeing you again. You a good girl. Just let me know what I can do to help.
Well, to help me, she'd have to help every day. Every hour, every ouch, every time my wife calls for help. I mean, maybe she could help me make her lunch. But the crust, all the crust has to be cut off the corners. She could help me run to the doctor for the 5th time this week. Help me with the specialist and the second opinions and the painful paperwork about paperwork. Help me deal with how hard it is seeing my wife's name on so much paperwork. But this is on me. I'm the only one who can do this, like this, for her. Besides,
Take care.
we will. Janet doesn't like her cooking anyway.
Find support for your strength. Visit aarp.org/caregiving for care guides and community.
Welcome back to this For Life production. For those who are just tuning in, I am interviewing United States Coast Guard veteran and Bellingham police officer Mark Auld. Welcome back. So, when did you make the decision to join the police force?
Well, I'd always knew ever since I was a kid that I wanted to be a police officer. But at the time when I was getting out of high school and when I first joined the Coast Guard, a police officer, especially in Massachusetts, is a very competitive position. So I just kept taking the tests, and eventually the last time I took it, I scored high enough, and Bellingham happened to be hiring at the time, and I was considered for the position. So it was coming right up to the end of my enlistment, so it kind of all worked out. All the timing was right.
So you were still in the Coast Guard when you were applying for this?
It was.
Now, for those who don't know, can you give a brief location of where Bellingham is?
Bellingham is, the way that I describe it is the corner of Massachusetts where the flat part of Massachusetts out west, where it starts to dip down. It's right on that corner. It's exit 18 off of 495.
Did you find being in the police force and being able to go home to your family every single day better than being on and off base while in the Coast Guard?
it's definitely better for family life in the Coast Guard. When I first joined, I was single. I didn't have any kids. I didn't have anybody depending on me to be there and take care of them. And now that I have 3 kids and a wife, it's a lot nicer and easier for her being home every night and being there for them when they need me, rather than being gone for 3 months at a time, to where she basically has to do everything on her own.
Would you say that the training in the police academy is comparable or extremely different from the training in the Coast Guard?
So, some aspects are the same, some are different. I'd say some similarities would be the military bearing, some of the same stuff that we did would be like drill and ceremonies, where like marching and stuff like that. The difference is Coast Guard boot camp was only 8 weeks long. The police academy was 6 months long, but we got to go home every day. We learned, it was all completely different, all different, laws and like traffic stops, stuff like that. Nothing that we would do in Coast Guard boot camp.
What would you say is your best memory from your time in the Coast Guard and the police force?
I'd say the similarities that I like about both would be the camaraderie between, members, whether it be the police department or in the Coast Guard. The friends you make all over the country. It's a very tight-knit group of people who, I keep in touch with a lot of them. I'd say I keep in touch with more people from the Coast Guard than from high school. I can probably count on one hand the number of people I keep in contact with from high school, and there's hundreds of people in the Coast Guard that I still talk to on whether it's a weekly, monthly, yearly basis.
And with the police force, one of your best memories?
I'd say so far, I've been a police officer for about 3 years now. I had a lot of fun in the academy. It was from the hour and a half drive each way that it took us, studying for a test, and just the basic, like, same thing, the camaraderie. I went with 3 other people from Bellingham who were going to the academy at the same time as me, and we're still we talk every day. One other guy from my academy's on my shift, and 2 other guys are on a different shift. But we still get together, and I think that bond is strong. And there's not a lot of people that can really understand what that's about.
Unless they're in the police force.
Exactly.
Well, I want to thank you again for your service to this country and to your community.
Thank you.
And that has been all for this For Life production. I'm Frederick Calhoun. Thank you for joining us today, and a too sweet to you all.